everyone. We are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a business podcast on global PropTech, where we talk to PropTech founders and CEOs from all over the world and learn from them how they build and scale world-class successful PropTech companies. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me an exciting guest, Colleen Werner. She's the founder and CEO at Lulafit. Lulafit is a consumer-grade experience brand that supports the future of work. Lulafit leads a team of consultants, operators, and technologists who pioneer front of house hospitality management. It's been a mouthful for me. I just picked this definition and the description from LinkedIn, but we have Colleen who is going to break this up for us to help us understand what Lulafit is. But before I welcome her onto the podcast, I would make a request to all our listeners out here. If you're listening to this podcast today, and if you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, I would encourage you to do that because, as you all know, PropTech is still a niche sector, and the audience for this is also niche. So the more people subscribe, we reach out to a wider audience and broaden the viewership or the listenership base for our podcast. So please do the honors. We are also on Spotify if you are interested on audio only podcast. If you're in your car, if you're on a jog, you can listen to audio only. So go to Spotify, search for PropTechBuzz, and just hit the follow button there. With that, let's welcome Colleen again. Colleen, welcome to PropTechBuzz. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is mine, Colleen. So, Colleen, in today's episode, we're going to learn everything about what Lulafit is and learn why technology is key to creating successful amenities. That is going to be the theme for today's conversation. But before we get into the meatier stuff, very curious to know about your background, your career trajectory, and what led you to build Lulafit.
Oh, this is always such a fun part because no one will ever guess it. I did not come from the real estate world, the technology world, the business world, but I did have a pretty interesting and intense career prior to this one. I was a professional ballet dancer.
Wow,
So yeah,
that is
I say the only thing that might be a little crazier than being an entrepreneur, but that was my life. Before this, I started dancing professionally when I was 14 and had a beautiful, 12-year career dancing all over the country and world, and landed me in this amazing world of hospitality. And then later in real estate and in the PropTech space. So I've been doing this for about 9 years now. So it's a pleasure to continue to see the PropTech industry, as you said, still very niche, but flourishing, which is incredible.
Got it. So I tried to read a template description of Lulafit. I did a bad job. Why don't you help us understand what Lulafit is and what does it offer to the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a hospitality company that's built for commercial real estate. So we do a few different things, but we primarily operate, build technology for, and consult on Class A real estate assets. We work in 14 different markets across the United States, and we're growing very rapidly. We have kind of four main service buckets. So first, we have been operators for the better part of 9 years, and then later tacked on technology, and then consulting. So one of our first service lines that we will typically work with our customer, which is landlords and operators of amazing real estate, is through the consulting lens. So we help landlords, particularly today, understand what types of amenities, what types of spaces, what type of technology, and what type of service they need to infuse into an existing asset or a brand new asset in order for it to reach its full potential, right? Whether that's leasing, whether that's driving occupancy and people back into the office space. And so we do this with a team of architects and data strategists who really help inform everything that we know across all of our operational sites from a data perspective, and help inform our landlords based on client type, right? What types of tenants are in your building? Do you have primarily technology companies? Do you have primarily business services? How big is it? Where is your building located? And that helps us help them figure out what types of spaces, how large they should be, and then build a business model around that. Once we complete that, we go into the actual operation of the space. So we handle all of the community engagement and events that happen throughout the spaces. We do all of the hosted conferencing, meetings, and events for tenants, handling all their catering and their AV and IT support, and also managing the fitness center. And we have our own proprietary technologies that manage conferencing and fitness centers that plug into this incredible ecosystem that's been built within the PropTech space. So we're the buttons that are located deeply within, the VTS Rises of the world, the HQOs of the world. And if they don't have those technologies, then we will, plug right into an Angus or a Building Engines.
Oh, that is phenomenal. Help me understand. Okay, how long have you been? You said you are operating in 14 different markets. How long have you been in the industry today? 9 years, did you say?
Yeah, 9 years. So I founded the company in 2014, which is really shocking. I think I lost a few years there with COVID, but yeah, it's been 9 years, which has been incredible.
This is incredible. So you are like offering end to end a wide gamut of offerings, right? And
Yeah.
since this is a business podcast, I'm always curious. How do you position yourself? Like, do you have an umbrella positioning wherein you could say we do this? How do you like, if I were to add you, so we're building a platform, right? If I were to add
Mhm.
Lulafit under a category, what category would Lulafit fit in?
See, this is the tough part about creating the category, Ravi, is it's very difficult to fit into the boxes that other people have put in. And I think that category is front of house hospitality. That's what we do.
front
So
front of
office
house hospitality.
front of house hospitality, right? So, you would know what property management is, right? That's back
Yes,
of house.
yes.
That's the back of house operation of a building. We're the front of house operation. We are the people that you're interacting with every single day. We're the technologies that you're touching every single day to actually use the building seamlessly and be empowered to have a more meaningful and purpose-driven experience at work.
That's nice. This is I'll be completely open and naive about it, because I'm not familiar with this. So when you say front of house, what does a house mean? Because this is a commercial real estate, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a house would be like the front desk. Is that how it is?
Yeah, so potentially a lobby. I mean, the house is the building, right? So
Right.
we're everything that's like front of the scene. So we're probably the first people that you see in the lobby. We are the team that is upstairs, or potentially downstairs, depending on where the spaces are, handling
Right.
all the conference and meeting bookings, as well as doing all of the tenant engagement and events. Right. So think about we're the people who are sending the newsletter that you're getting, telling you what's going on in your building. We're the people who are hosting the
Wow.
happy hour or the food tasting event that's happening on your amenity floor. And we're also doing, again, all the fitness and wellness activations. So my team are the ones that are really creating the culture in the amenity spaces. But I think the word amenity, quite frankly, is getting a bit outdated. I think hospitality is typically the word that we're seeing used more frequently. And it's because of this shift of landlords and operators seeing that, the tenants of these spaces are looking for these buildings to be operated much like luxury hotel assets rather than the office buildings that our parents and grandparents were forced into every day for 100 years. And
So
that is really a huge shift that's happening right now.
let's double down on that, okay? Because you are an expert in this field. You have been for so long in this industry, and have tasted a fair bit of success there. Help us understand the difference between amenity and hospitality. What is it that is shifting in terms of culture, in terms of how you're offering these services?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Actually, I'm going to use this back, right? There is a big difference between an amenity and a hospitality, right? An amenity could be, you did an FF&E, revamp of your tenant lounge. And now you have an amenity of a tenant lounge that people can go and sit in. Great. Does that want to make you get out of bed every day, sit in traffic, and fight massive crowds on a subway to go into your office building? Probably not, right? Hospitality is a team that is activating that space, right? It's the person serving you coffee when you walk into that lounge, and the best avocado toast you've ever had in your life. As I will say, as my friend David Morton always says, right? That's the most and crucial parts of kind of that experience. And then being able to sit down and watch a live speaker talk about something that you were interested in, all before you go up and start your day at work, right? And so that's the difference between having an amenity space and having a hospitality program and team that is creating meaning and purpose behind that space. And that we know is what people are wanting to come back to work for.
Got it. And help us understand. So you must have really evolved over the years and raised the bar as you grew with experience, right? So how much of this offering is strategy? How much there is a technology play there? Help us understand how do you like you get a new client? How do you go about it? Like what's the rigmarole behind it?
It's a really good question, and I would say it's hard to wait, right? What thing for us is more important than the other. I don't think you can have good people without good technology behind them. I don't think you can have good space without good data and technology behind it. And so, when we start to work with a client, they're typically coming to us. There is over 1 billion square feet of real estate assets in this country alone that need to be repositioned. So right now, the majority of our work is working with landlords on repositioning their asset. So 5 years ago, they had a Class A asset sitting in a major market, potentially in the central business district of that major market. And today they have 70%, vacancy and are completely slipping out of favor. Like they might be considering, handing the keys back to the bank. They hire us to come in and help consult on what do we do? How do we make ourselves more attractive to tenants who are leasing in this market? And once we get those leases signed, how do we drive these employees into this building the majority days of the week, right? I don't think anyone's under the impression that people are going to be walking in, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 anymore. But we want these employees to be coming in, not because their employer said they have to, but because they want to be a part of the experience and the community that we've curated on site. Once we are done with the consulting, engagement, and the site is under construction, we're building that, staffing model and that technology plan. What is the technology stack of this building going to be? What is your access control? How does that integrate with your tenant experience? Layering in our technologies that we use to operate our space and making sure that those are facilitated into this larger, again, ecosystem of technologies so that you as a tenant, when you walk in the door, you have one app and you can do everything on it, right? You can enter the building seamlessly. You can book spaces, services, you can pay for things. And it really reduces your barrier of entry, which creates a better experience for you as the customer.
And who provides this app?
So there's a lot of different players in the PropTech space, as I'm sure you know. Typically, the front kind of layer that the tenant is actually seeing is a tenant experience app, right? And I'm sure you know those players, right? There's ETS has one, HQO has one, Cove, Cohesion, Equium. And then there's a lot of different specialists in technology that roll up into those apps, right? Some that you probably know, access control, right? So there's a lot of different, ecosystems that kind of are contributing, and we are a part of that, right? So anything that has to do with membership management, payment, and kind of waivers in a fitness center, that is our technology. Anything that has to do with bookings and marketing of the actual conference and meeting spaces, that is also our technology. And so again, we're kind of knitted into this larger fabric of what the tenant experience ecosystem is.
Got it. So since you are acting as a consultant, are you also offering consulting of what kind of this technology stack should be for running an efficient facility?
We are, and mostly just because we're there very early, right? So really an intelligent building is designed with technology in mind, right? But architects don't typically typically have that knowledge, right? They're not as plugged into the PropTech ecosystem as we are. And so as we're working with architects and owners on what these spaces should look like, we're also talking about how will someone use them. So I'll give you a good example. We're building a meeting room, right?
Right.
Well, we don't want this to just be a meeting room. We want a tenant to be able to go book that meeting room on the app. The reader on the outside of the door lets the rest of the world know that the meeting room has been reserved. And when that tenant walks in, we know whether they're going to be using Zoom or Teams or WebEx. And so now the entire room is set up for success for them. They can walk in, they can start their meeting, and everything has happened seamlessly, right? Because there's been a really crucial combination of good technology and good people who are creating that experience and making sure it happens.
Help me understand, before Lulafit existed, who was making these choices or decisions of what should be the entire tech stack? Okay, because as you said, architects are not responsible for this. The design planners are not responsible for this. Is this the IT folks who need to of the building? I do not know who is actually responsible when a new construction or a new commercial building comes up, before you entered the fray.
That's a good question. And I don't think, we are not in every single building in the entire country. So this is still happening. But a lot of what the problem that I see in the PropTech space right now is that we've got this very fragmented buying process, right? So there are a lot of different parties, right, that are involved in the creation of a building, right? There's the landlord and the architect at the very beginning. You get your general contractor involved at some point, then it shifts over to the property management team. And all of those different parties are buying different things, right? So now the end user, right, is faced with a myriad of different technologies, some that probably work well for their uses and others that do not. And so to answer your question, it's this fragmentation that I think is a huge problem in our space and a big thing that we're trying to solve for.
Because I don't think anybody is thinking holistically. Okay,
no.
It's like a patchwork, and as a result, you if there are different people making different technology stack decisions, then you are somehow bringing them together and somehow wanting them to work instead of building a clear strategy on what the tech stack should be.
Exactly.
So when you consult, are you consulting on building an overall strategy for tech stack? Is that how it is?
It depends how deep we're getting in the engagement, but yes. And I think, at the end of the day, here's the reason why. There's one key space, right, where most of these different technologies overlap. And that's our space. That's the amenity space, right? And so what we see typically is a mess of different products that don't seamlessly integrate together. They don't really work in the operating environment, but worse, they don't solve the problem of the end user. And that's because a typical PropTech company, as you know, doesn't interact with the end user. We do. That's what we do every single day. We're an operator. And so just like in hospitality, right? If Goldman Sachs acquires a hotel property, they don't call Hilton and say, "Hi, Hilton, we'd like you to come run this property. And here are 15 technology solutions that we bought just for you to run it. Like, good luck. Here's everything you need." No, Hilton comes and says, "Great, Goldman, you approve the budget and we're going to bring in the technologies that we know work as the operator." And that's what we've been able to do. And I do think it is really transforming the way technology is bought and distributed to the end user in the building, at least in the spaces that we're running. But we're still small, Ravi. So we're not really solving this, it's going to take another few years to solve this for the entire world.
No, I understand. So when I asked you before I did not mean that you are conquering the world here. I'm just asking, without a specialist like you, who does the job? Okay, so as you said, there is general contractor, there's
so many people who do the job. I mean, that's a great question, right? I mean, it could be the landlord kind of before they brought a property manager in. It could be the property manager. It could be someone specific on a team who's responsible for maybe it's the security team or someone in the building, the engineer who's responsible for figuring out access control, who's responsible. And that's kind of the problem, right? There really is no centralized group. There's no centralized team who is installing these. And so, we're really the most we're paying the most attention to the things that touch our space on the amenity floor. And that's kind of, that is our sweet sauce. That's what we know. But we do see that having a net effect kind of up and down, right? So, from everything that's happening in the back of house to everything that's happening up in the tenant spaces.
Right. So when you go and pitch to a new client, what are your what are the outcomes that you are selling? Is the outcome the net promoter score or satisfaction score for the employees? If it's an office, how do you measure the success of what you do?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And this has really changed over time. When I started the company, amenities, PropTech, I mean, this was all foreign language to most of our clients. Today, there is a high demand for all of this, but they have a hard time understanding why they actually need it. And the reality is what you just asked. Really, what is the ROI of doing something like this, right? Why would you go and spend money on building them? Once you've already spent money on building them, why would you spend money on having someone operate them? And the reality is kind of twofold. Depending on how the building is underwritten and what the leases look like, amenities don't really need to be a cost center to the building. There are a ton of different ways to drive revenue, whether it's internally with tenants or externally with the public, right? That's surrounding the buildings. We're typically not working in buildings that are in the middle of nowhere. We're really within a broader ecosystem with the community around it. So that's first. There can be tangible ROI, right? Real dollars flowing through. Many of the amenity spaces that we operate are profitable, right? So we are driving significant revenue. On the flip side, there's ROI with leases, right? So
sorry to interrupt. Where are you driving revenues? Because are you driving revenues by getting more people inside the building, or how do you drive revenues?
Great question. Conference center bookings, right? You have to pay for the conference center. You pay for an events, support, right? To help you plan your event, host your event. So all of that service is now in-house, and the landlord is profiting off of it because we're running it on their behalf. Fitness center memberships, personal training in a fitness center, and then all of the F&B activation as well.
Got it. Yeah.
So they're significant. You would be very surprised at the significant amount of money that is able to be pumped into these spaces when done correctly. Now, some landlords don't have that opportunity. They have leases that say these, their employees are going to use these amenities for free, or they're, especially a lot of the COVID leases. I see, people were trying to get deals done. A lot of these amenities are free. The amenities themselves and this type of service helps get those leases done. So a lot of our landlord partners will come and they say, listen, we're not looking to drive revenue here, but this is something that is so competitive in our market. We not only need to do it, but we need to do it better than anybody else. And that's why they hire us, right? We build them. And I think something really important we haven't talked about is you're not going to walk into a Lulafit space, Robbie. Everything we do is white labeled. So we build our clients a proprietary brand and experience with spaces that are unique to them and their population that they can really work with us to strategize, how do we bring this to market? And we've been involved in several, repositions of buildings or new construction of buildings where, anchor tenants have come because of the amenities that we are working on. They haven't even been done yet. And then, we'll eventually be operated by us. And so those have been, I think, some real case studies for us that show whether a large tenant is renewing. In 2018, we had a very large renewal with EY at their one of their main headquarter buildings in Chicago. That was we were very deeply involved in with the leasing team. And then more recently, working with Thor Equities in Chicago to secure the Aspen Group in their Fulton Market building. Over half of that building went to the Aspen Group. We were able to help articulate what the experience was going to be. And now we work with them very closely as the operating partner there. And then also in Chicago with Boston Consulting Group. They left a building, kind of in the core hub of Chicago. They went out to Fulton Market. We were working on that project with Sterling Bay. And Sterling Bay, all of these groups had us in the room with this tenant before the leases were executed. So we are able to sell the vision on what the employee experience will be in this building based on what we are creating there. when a tenant gets in early enough, like BCG did, right? The BCG story is amazing. I mean, they were in so early, we had ideas, we were fleshing things out, but we actually got to work with BCG to curate something that is really special for their employees. They have a very, this culture and this vision of the next 10 years that they're trying to build. And when Sterling Bay brought us in to work with them on it, we were really able to create something that I think is going to speak to where they're going, right? Not where they've been, but where they're going. And so that's a huge tangible ROI, right? When you can be a part of getting leases done and your name of the company is in the lease, right? I think that's a really strong ROI. So whether you're driving revenue, from the daily operation, or you're actually filling your building with tenants, I think those are the main two buckets of ROI. Of course, we measure engagement, right? We want people to be coming into the building and using the spaces on a regular basis. Right now, and I actually just heard this week, I told you I was just at an executive offsite. Right now, today, we are capturing 50% engagement in a building from what we are measuring as the average daily footfall. So those badge stripes, right? We're getting 50% of people coming into an office building engaging with us. That's pretty, that's good, right? So
engage 50% are engaging with the amenities you provide.
Yes. So we're engaging with over half the building every week when they walk in. So
Nice.
We know, that tells you right there, people want this type of service in their building. They need this type of service. They want, incredible technology. They want incredible service. But most importantly, they want purpose. They want meaning. They want community. They want to connect with other human beings. That's why they're coming to work. And
Very
so
interesting. I've never heard such conversations. It's always amenities, and not hospitality, and not you are raising the bar of what it should be, right? It's a culture. You're building a new philosophy to workplace, which I have not had. It's otherwise commercial real estate is always is very dull and boring, and yes, it is all about
transactional, right? It's very transactional.
Yeah.
But I think that's the whole point, right? Like, we're facing a reckoning in commercial real estate, and the world is telling us you must be less transactional or we won't value you. And that is, I think, ultimately why we're seeing such, success in our business.
Also what you're offering is very, very timely, because especially after COVID, where the entire world is struggling to get back the workforce to offices, right? So what you're trying here is you're solving that big pain point that major companies are facing. So what is actually working to get people to return to offices rather than working from home? Like, do you want to? We have several conversations about the hybrid models, but could you shed some light, because you are at the center of this cultural change? With what you are offering, have you been able to see a shift of people opting to come to offices more?
Absolutely. One, I think we're all seeing that, right? And again, I know there are a lot of news headlines, right, talking about this huge vacancy in office. We're not, and again, we are affected by that. We do, have some, trust me, we have some cities in particular where, the average daily footfall is low, engagement is lower. But we are seeing in the sector that we're in, right, in that Class A sector, we are seeing that perform much better than some of the other asset, types that you might see, particularly in office. So I just want to give that caveat, right? Like, I'm not saying that not all office buildings are struggling, and that some cities are really having a much harder time with this. I'll tell you, I've never loved the Sun Belt and the South more. And I'm a Midwest girl, but not a lot of people, not as many people are coming back in the Midwest. But what we see is that, these kind of quick fixes, as we've discussed, aren't really the answer. There's been a flight to quality long before COVID, right? Long before COVID. COVID, unfortunately, for many of our customers, really forced the hand of landlords, right? There was no longer a choice to do this. And I think, to your point, like, wow, I'm hearing about this for the first time. You're not the only one, right? But I think that we're probably on a 10-year trajectory of this really changing over time, and it happened overnight. So I think we see a few things that are really key to driving people back into the space. One, we've already touched on. You can't check a box, right? Putting some new fitness equipment in and a new couch and TV in your lounge is save your money. It's not going to do anything. If you don't plan on activating it afterwards, it's just not a good use of investment. And by the way, we've been in consulting arrangements where, we've had to tell a client that, right? Like, we respect that you are.
Give me an example of when you say activating it. What does activating it
Installing
mean?
a team, programming, putting together an events budget, right, for your tenant population, really, offering some sort of food, whether you have an F&B operator or you are running a pantry service. I mean, you got to give people purpose, right? And that's what they're looking for. No one wants to go sit in an empty lounge with elevator music playing, right? So there's all of these little elements that we really need to pay attention to, and the space isn't going to do it. And that's a pretty big shock for people who have dealt with space and put a price on every square foot of their space their entire career, right? To then say, that's not really enough anymore. That's not working. Sometimes I have to be the bearer of that bad news. There's kind of a couple other main things, right? The first 15 minutes of an experience of an office worker has never been more important. We all know that outside of our buildings, we don't have a lot of control of what's going on, right? Our headquarters is in Chicago. I mean, we do tenant discovery on, consulting projects, and people are worried about safety, and they're worried about, commute times, and they're worried. I mean, this is something that's real. We can't affect what happens between when they leave their front door and when they get to our front door. But when they hit our front door, it better be exceptional. So we really need to pay attention to how they're arriving and how we can up the level of their arrival experience, right? What are their pain points? How can we relieve them? And that's really where we come in. From our, data, popular amenities right now, the number one is on-site food and beverage. So that is, people want to have an incredible cup of coffee. They want great, easy breakfast options, lunch options. You need a variety of price points. We see so many landlords that go with the old white tablecloth restaurant, in their retail space, and they think that's enough. That is very rarely going to be used by the majority of your building unless they're all making, substantial money. And so, we really encourage and help landlords figure out what is the right F&B operation. That's the number one thing that we're seeing people really, really using. The next is meeting and event spaces, particularly boardrooms, made up for 46% of our bookings last year. Boardrooms. You'd think, doesn't everyone have a boardroom in their space, right? Doesn't every company have a boardroom in their office? Yes, but they don't have a hospitality person attached to it. Who will handle the catering, who will make sure the AV is working, who will do all of the back of house things so that they just have to walk in, have their meeting, close their deal, talk to their board, whatever it is, and walk out. And they like that change of scenery. They want to get off their floor. So we see meetings and event spaces are huge. And we also see fitness centers and outdoor spaces being largely utilized. And again, I get a lot of questions around, are fitness centers really necessary anymore in office buildings? Like, we're thinking about not doing one. I definitely think they've gotten a bit smaller and more efficient, which is our favorite thing to help with, right? How can we kind of build some efficiency in a lot of these spaces? But it's still necessary. People want to move. They want to be healthy. Think about when you were stuck in your house, right? You were going for a walk, you were able to work out, and people don't want to give that up. Right? They're not willing to give that up. And so we've got to create that accessible, easy wellness opportunity for them. And so, and the outdoor spaces as well. I think those two kind of tie together. The wellness and outdoor spaces really, really paired. So those are the top three, right? F&B, meetings and events, and kind of the fitness, wellness, outdoor spaces. So, again, you can put those spaces in, right? It may have some effect, but most tenants in market right now are looking for a plan. How are you activating them? What kind of events are you doing? What kind of team do you have running this? And how do I feel like it's unique so that my employees are wowed when they walk in the door and they continue to come back?
Got it. See, Colleen, just curious, So the things that you mentioned, not everybody will have a budget to do all of this, right? It sounds, when you say, when you raise the bar from amenities to hospitality, you also raise the bar of the cost, right? So do you give them some sort of an ROI of the investment they would make, and what the returns they would get, tangible and non-tangible together? Do you give them some kind of a pitch so that they understand the value of the investment they need to make?
Our main job is making sure that we're building, if a client is going to go down the path of repositioning their asset and investing, I mean, we see clients with a wide range of investment dollars going into these spaces. I'd say on the low end, it's probably between 3 and 5 million. On the high end, it's upwards of 100 million, right? With somewhere in the average of 40 to 60 million. So you're right. These are not cheap. This is not a splash of FF&E in your lounge and calling it a day.
Yeah.
I think we look at a couple different things. Again, what is the leasing velocity that we need to create here, right? So working with the leasing team to really understand, is it possible? Can we raise the current price per square foot? We just worked on a project in Phoenix where we set records in Phoenix. Same thing in Chicago we've been able to do. So, these are really tangible. You're going to invest, our client in Phoenix put 46 million in, but you're going to now set records and be the highest price per square foot office building in your market, right? Okay, there's some ROI there. And then building them an operational business model, right? That if we can do it, can actually drive some revenue and isn't just a cost center. So now you're really able to create a sustainable practice. So unlike, traditional prop tech where you're only spending on infusing the technology in there, we are also making sure that we can drive some ROI and create revenue opportunities within these spaces. They're hospitality spaces. They do very well creating revenue.
Nice. Help us understand what's your business model like. So when you propose this solutions, how do you price yourself for the services that you're offering?
Great question. So a little bit of a mix of like a more traditional operating company. We do have a management fee associated with our work, and all of our expenses of the space that we operate is passed through to the landlord, right? So all of the salaries of our team, all of the marketing and insurance requirements, and all of those things are passed through to our owner that we work with. And then on a technology case, we charge on either a project or a per square foot basis. Just kind of depends on what technology stack is our client is going to knit together, right? So do they need our fitness center technology? Do they need just our conference room technology? What is their tenant experience technology, right? Who do we need to integrate with? If they don't have one and our app needs to be really like the button that a tenant hits, that it's a little bit different price model. It's more the price per square foot. So, it's a separate fee structure for that. Consulting, which would happen before operating, is our one-time fee. It's the only part of our business that is not recurring revenue, which was a bit hard to stomach when we first launched it, because we're obviously have a very healthy, profitable business, but it's actually been one of the fastest growing divisions of our company. We launched it about 2 years ago, and we currently are active on 67 projects across the US.
Nice. So you mentioned about the technology. You keep mentioning about the app. The app is not yours. Am I right?
Sorry, no, the app is ours. Yeah. So we have our
Oh,
own app that
nice.
integrates. Yeah. Again, we're the operator, Robbie, right? So we've created our own technology. We
Nice.
typically just sit behind that layer, right? We sit behind
Right.
the HQO, or we sit behind the VTS Rise. But every time a tenant goes to click on that button to book a meeting room or, become a member of the fitness center, they're going into our technology. They just don't know it. They're just still within the tenant experience app.
Yeah, you keep mentioning some popular software which I'm not aware. Could you give us a sense of who the major players are when you say HPO Rise? Did you say, right? So could you give us a sense of who these major players are, and how do you sit behind, and how does this entire ecosystem look like? Say, for example, there are other listeners who might want to solve a very small piece of this entire ecosystem. Okay, what
Yeah.
would your recommendation be to them to get in here. Okay. Um, what is this a level playing field, or it is hard to get in? It's highly competitive. Who gets to choose? How do these commercial real estate make decisions on trying out new technologies, new startups? Like, I will tell you, PropTechBuzz is going to be a launch platform. In 7th of August, we are launching our platform where new PropTech products are getting launched and promoted. Okay. My question to you is, I'm packing a lot of questions in this. Um, First of all, you need to let me know how this ecosystem of major players are,
Love it.
and then
I even have a slide for it, Robbie, if we really want to, we could do a little PropTech tenant experience 101 here.
Yes. So that'll be nice. And then how, if somebody new, a new startup comes in and he says, hey, you know what, I can solve this little piece better than anybody else. What would be your suggestion to them to get into this space?
Great. So I'll start with the first one. Just, there is a huge PropTech ecosystem, as you know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's access control, visitor management, flex, space marketplace, conferencing, wellness, smart IoT, building operations, co-working, tenant experience. I mean, there's a million. We, really deal in the tenant experience world. That's where we sit, right? We are a tenant facing technology and hospitality company. There are, I would say, and I don't want to undercut any other tenant experience apps out there, but right now there are 6 major players, I think it would be safe to say, in the tenant experience app space. That is like the top of funnel app, right? They are the button on your phone. Those are HQO, VTS Rise. So you're probably familiar with VTS, right? They're one of the largest PropTech companies in the space. They have a tenant experience platform called Rise. Equium.
Okay.
Host, which has also just done a VTS, merger collaboration. They're both a CBRE company, so they're kind of coming together.
Sorry, I missed that. Which is the fourth one?
Host. So it's CBRE's tenant experience platform, which is really now being combined with Rise, which should be really interesting. The 5th one is Cove.
Okay.
And the last one is Cohesion. So those are really, I would say, your 6 major tenant experience app players.
Nice. Never. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Then you have, yeah, right. Then you kind of have your leading integrators layer. Okay. So there's access control. Leading integrator there is Swift Connect. Have you heard of Swift Connect?
No.
Robbie, we got to get you some intros into the tenant experience world here. All right, put that on your list.
After this, I'm gonna prepare my worksheet. Yes, please. Yeah, Swift Connect.
Then there's the leading work orders integrator, right? That one's, I would say, Prism, right? I mean, you could argue. I'm. This is my opinion, right? But there's a lot of different players, but Prism's probably the main one, right? That really is built to integrate. For wellness, it's our app. Right? We are built to integrate. We were not built to stand alone somewhere else. We are built to be integrated into one of those 6 apps.
Is it called Lulafit?
Our fitness product's called Lulafit. Yep. Our conferencing product, which is next, right? We're the leading integrator in the conferencing sector as well, is called Lulameet. So that's our conferencing app. Yeah. The visitor management. Right? That's Castle. Have you heard of Castle? Right? They're the ones that are publishing all those reports about badge swipes, KASTLE. And there's the list goes on. Then there's really, really solid point solutions, Robbie, who might integrate. A lot of them have the ability to integrate into tenant experience apps, but they are built to be the best of the best single thing. And they probably have a lot of different ways that you could work with them, right? They can either integrate, they can stand alone. They might actually have been a consumer product before this. Let me give you a couple of examples, right? So Swift Connect is the leader of access control integrators, but there are also some other really strong players in this space, right? You've got HID, Honeywell, right? Brevo. I mean, there's a lot of big, point solutions for access control. Work orders, Yardi, Angus, building engines. I mean, these are apps that can run an entire building. They don't need tenant experience. They weren't built to plug into it. they can stand on their own. So that just kind of gives you an example of how this space is set up.
Right. So help me understand. So it looks like quite competitive. Okay, a mix of very
That would be
prominent
an
big names.
understatement.
That would be an understatement, right? Because
We told you write a roadmap, right? Here's how you can navigate the landscape of PropTech ecosystem. So does that better help you understand my answer to my question earlier, right? Which is like, who is buying all these things? Well, you had a property manager buying a point solution here, and you had a general contractor sticking a sensor on a door so that you could know who was in the room here, and none of them talk to each other. And they're like, no one can extract the data, and it's just like a complete muddled mess a little bit when this isn't knit together properly with purpose.
Yeah. So how do they make these buying decisions? Okay. So I suppose they go to consultants like you, because otherwise it's very hard to navigate this entire maze of offerings. So they would have to go to somebody expert who can give them a sense, and give them a sense of buying behavior. Otherwise they will be lost in this, right? And also there are always exciting new players coming in. um,
Exactly.
is there a way to also help me understand, if you were to give advice, you're an advisor to a startup who wants to get into this space and has a very great point solution that is better than any of the existing ones, what would your suggestion be for them to get into this space?
Really great question. I think one, play well in the sandbox with others, right? That's probably the number one, key. If you are an incredible point solution and you are built with purpose for one thing and one thing only, and that's how I look at our technology, right? We have the best in class point solution for fitness center management and the best in class point solution for conferencing. Why we are the leader on the integrator side is because that's what we were built for. We were built for nothing else but PropTech. That is all we do. We just integrate into these ecosystems, and we only operate office space. And so I think, it's that kind of that age old saying, right, that I would say to anybody I was mentoring: stay narrow, stay focused, stay disciplined. If you want to conquer the world later and be, a solution for a million other different industries, like DocuSign, right? I mean, DocuSign started out as a real estate company, a PropTech real estate company. Right? They were, yes. I mean, ironically, they did the same accelerator that I did probably 10 years before me, but they were built for residential real estate transactions, right? Signing those documents. Look at them now. You would never have even known that, right? But the reality is they were super disciplined and focused. They nailed their area of expertise, and then they grew and expanded outside of that.
Got it. And so the other suggestion would be, while you can be great at your point solution, solving that one problem and one niche, you should also be open to integrate with the ecosystem. Without integrations, you will fail, isn't it?
Yes. And you don't have to integrate with everybody all the time, but really make sure, I think when you're building technology, and this is, what we've tried to do, which I would credit a lot of our success for, obviously build an open API, right? But also build your system very modularly. So I think one of the cruxes of, a lot of what happens in PropTech is that it's incredibly manual and engineering heavy, right? Like a lot of our, the solutions that we see in these space don't acknowledge other best in class technologies across technology as a general sector. So I'll give you an example, but we're one of the only PropTech companies that hasn't gone and built our own payment system. We use Stripe. Do you think that a company like us could outbuild Stripe? Absolutely not, right? And so we're not going to try. We're just going to use Stripe as our, kind of finance power behind us. So, I think right now we are facing a reckoning with being able to raise money. It is so difficult to go out and raise money for your PropTech, idea or any technology idea. So you're going to have to be more nimble than ever. And because I didn't start off as a technology entrepreneur, I started off with a services company, an operating company, and later became technology enabled operator. I bootstrapped my company for 5 years. I know what it's like to be scrappy. And any entrepreneur who's entering this space or any other space right now in technology needs to be really scrappy and really good. And so what I would recommend is finding ways that you can build efficiently, modularly, right? So that you can throw away things that aren't working. One of our core values at Lulafit is like kind of throwing away the ideas that don't work anymore and not holding on to that. And I think that's incredibly important right now because the world is changing so fast. The industry is changing so fast. And there's a lot of fear and scarcity in the market right now from investors and from buyers around kind of what this is all going to look like. And so if you have an idea, a point solution, or that you think is going to change the game, set yourself up for success by making it incredibly easy to work with you.
How do they make their presence felt? So I can understand that it's also about marketing and branding, right? So in a crowded place like this, you might be the best next product that you have built, point solution you have built, but how do you promote yourself? Where do you go? Do you go to conferences, which are again damn expensive? You cannot have your booth there. Any ideas, or they talk to people like you and make a pitch to you so that you can recommend them to your next client? How does it work?
Well, it's interesting. So every company has a different strategy. I think we are going to see a lot of shifts in that strategy as we've seen valuations plummet. I think I love that you brought up conferences. I have gone to a lot of conferences. I've been to all the big PropTech conferences. You'll never see us sponsor one, right? Like that's just not where we put our money. We put our money into actual delivery of our products and services, because we hold 100% client retention over 9 years and a 93 NPS score. And when you can do that, you can walk in and say, we're not sponsoring the conference, but we are the best solution. And here's why. You need to find one customer, get them to be a raving fan, and make introductions for you and recommendations for you. Build a case study around what you were able to do for them, and then go sell on that, right? Sell on your reputation, not on your marketing dollars. Of course, you're going to want to do marketing. And, I think speaking at conferences is probably better than just sponsoring them. But I think building your network is how you get started, right? So again, finding, founders like me in the PropTech space who can make introductions for you, really when they do, and you get that client, knock it out of the park. The worst thing you can do is take on too many clients at the beginning and not deliver. And I've seen a lot of PropTech companies completely fail because they were unable to deliver on what they were selling. And keep your sales force in check too, right? Like don't let your sellers going out selling something you don't do yet. If your competitor does 8 more things than you do, don't let your sellers walk into a room and say that you do all those things and then come back to your team and say, oh guys, we got to build this in 2 weeks because we got to do this. Say, be disciplined, have discipline. Say, we don't do that yet. We do this one thing. We do it better than anybody.
Got it. So again, you are at the cutting edge. You are at the center of this activity. Where do you see this space evolving in the coming years? Like, how do you see more consolidations happening, like these smaller players joining hands and taking a bigger pie of this entire workflows, or new technologies coming in? Some disruptions going to be. Could you give us a sense of how this space is evolving?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of consolidation already, over the last few years, particularly in our space, particularly due to COVID, right? We've had like a private equity group come in and roll up some of our competitors into like a larger group. We have some of the larger like workplace players like WeWork and Industrious kind of, coming in to our space. I think the biggest opportunity that and kind of trend that I see happening on the office side, and it goes back to one of your first questions, Robbie, which is what the heck is front of house hospitality, is that there's a bigger focus in spend on front of house hospitality now than there ever has been. Where I think a lot of the margins and the spend is going to get kind of depressed is actually on the more traditional property management. And I think a lot of that is due to PropTech players and technology, incredible technology companies that are just solving for a lot of the manual things that a person behind the scenes has to do. Behind the scenes is the perfect place to replace technology with a human. The front scenes, which is where we are, is where you bring technology in to support the human. And so I think if we pay attention to those two things, where can we actually drive efficiency and replace a manual piece with technology? And where do we empower really good people who are always better at building relationships and driving money with really good technology? And so those are the two areas I think in our space that I see as the big technology opportunity.
Excellent. My last two questions here. So, in your journey of 9 years, I'm sure it's a roller coaster every time, right? Um, what has been your biggest lows and biggest highs in this journey?
uh, Definitely, had some lows during the pandemic. I, like a lot of other founders, had to do a lot of layoffs and furloughs, and I think, many moments questioned whether the thing that I felt so strongly about, which is the physical world and like coming back into workplaces together, was going to be completely irrelevant. And those are some tough days. And then I think some of the highs have been, I mean, this year alone, we have 4x'd our revenue. We've grown our footprint, incredibly fast, while still maintaining extremely happy clients, which is awesome. But the thing that I value most is my actual team that I get to do this with, and the incredible culture that I think that we've been able to build at my company. We work really hard, but we have a lot of fun, and I have so much care and respect and admiration for the people who are on this journey with me, and I know they do the same for me. So there's really nothing better than like working hard, but kind of working hard next to people that you would jump in front of a bus for.
Nice. I was asked to ask this question, that there are some projects that you're working on that you're excited about. Are there some projects that you're working on?
Well, there are a lot of projects we're working on, as we've grown incredibly fast this year, and we're rolling out a couple of portfolios which are super exciting. One right now we're rolling out with a brand new operating partner of ours in Boston. We're rolling out 5 million feet with them, which I'm excited about, and building this proprietary kind of brand and experience for them. Doing the same thing with another group in the Sun Belt, working on this incredible opportunity to build them a brand, technology, hospitality, space, all of these things kind of coming together. And that has really expanded our footprint outside of, kind of the few key markets that we've been into now, as I mentioned, 14 markets across the US and growing. And so, we have the best clients. We're really, really disciplined in our sales cycle around like who we can do well with, because we know that the delivery of our products and services are so important to us. And so I feel incredibly grateful to get to help them create value in stuff that I think also in the last few years they've had questions on, will this ever be valuable again? So it's an exciting time for us.
Got it. So while it is exciting time now, how does the next few years look like for you?
Yeah, I think, continued bumps in terms of, leasing, always, being as big and bold as we've seen it over, the few years prior to COVID. And I'm sure occupancy is, going to continue to struggle to get back to pre-pandemic levels. But I think we measure like the impact that we have on the people who walk into these buildings every day. And we know, looking at our data, that not only are we having a positive impact on them by holding such a high NPS score, and as well as our engagement numbers, but we also see them coming back, right? And so kind of to develop that really core customer base that just, they're coming into their workplace every day. I mean, I want to live in a world in the next few years where people go to work because they want to. And that's what we're trying to do, right? Not because they have to, that's the world we're leaving, but because they want to. And if we can accomplish that, then I've done my job.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a very fascinating conversation with Colleen. Colleen, your passion comes through every cell of yours. You keep mentioning about purpose. That is also very true of what you're doing, and I think you are very purpose driven on what you are trying to achieve here. and I can sense with the energy that you bring in to the table. Thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom to me, giving me a one-on-one. I'm going to dig deeper on that foundation that you laid for me. And thanks and all the best. And I'll be closely watching your progress, and hopefully in a year's time or so, we'll get you back again to give us some more insights into this industry. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thank you.
Bye bye, Colleen.